Good morning. I'm delighted to welcome you all here this morning on behalf of Creative Schools and the Arts Council to our webinar, Making Mandalas from Nature. And we're really thrilled to have artist Laura Ní Fhlaibhín with us this morning. And she's going to walk you through making your own mandala. And I hope you all really enjoy. So I'll hand over to you, Laura.
Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. It's really good to see you. I work as a visual artist, and I'm also trained as a primary teacher, and I work with primary and secondary schools as a creative associate with Creative Schools. And I'm really excited to lead today's workshop on creating your own mandalas from a mixture of bits and pieces that you might have at home, at school, and bits and pieces that you can find when you're out and about. And before we start, I just want to share with you like some information about what a mandala is. Some of you might have heard of mandalas, and some of you mightn't have heard the word at all yet. So just bear with me. I'm going to share my screen. Um, Whoops, just try that again. Um, let's see. Hopefully it's a nice large size this time. And I've got some images here that show different types of mandalas that have been made all around the world. This one is made by a Buddhist monk, and he's starting at the center, and he's using colored sand to work on his mandala. So in the mandala, he's using different size circles and he's moving outwards. If you look carefully, hopefully you can see some pencil marks on his table. And that's showing the circles getting bigger and bigger. And he's also using squares. He's starting with a smaller circle in the middle and working outwards. And you can see at the side here lots of paper cups with different coloured sand all ready for him to use. And he's using a straw and some kind of little tiny tool to get really nice lines. So that's in a Buddhist monastery. Some images here that show the image here that my cursor is on now shows a sand mandala. This one here shows a collage mandala from South America. And this one here, also from South America, shows a stone carving mandala. So you can see all of them are starting from the middle, starting from the center and working outwards. This one here is from a cathedral stained glass window in France, and again, starting in the middle and working outwards. And the last image is from ancient Rome, from a floor mosaic. So if you look carefully, you can see lots of tiny tiles. And that again is a mandala, starting in the middle and working outwards. So in a mandala, there's lots of concentric circles. That means circles getting slowly bigger. And we're thinking about kind of a center point. And mandalas have often been used as a way to help our well-being, to help us feel calm, to help us focus our mind on doing one activity. And repeating a pattern of the circle can really help with our well-being and feeling peaceful and calm. So hopefully you'll get some nice ideas for what you can do with mandalas in this workshop. Thanks a million. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to start with a first activity that hopefully you can do something similar in your classroom now. I went out gathering bits and pieces. So if you can get some materials ready on your desk now. So I've got a shell, I've got some leaves, I've got a few flower petals, I've got some grass, and I've got some very new little kind of conkers from the tree, little green spiky things. And I've also got, they're not exactly foraged from the garden, but I thought these could be nice too, just little cocktail sticks. So if you can, I've moved all my other bits and pieces from my desk to give myself some space. So if you could do the same. So I'll give us about 30 seconds to give us some clear space for working in your classroom. And it would be great if you can have all your materials that you're going to use close by. So please use this time to get yourself ready, clear your desk, and have your materials that you've already gathered ready next to you. So we're going to start with our center point. So I'm using a shell for my center of my mandala, our circular center. And I'm going to make my first circle now around it. I found these petals on the ground. They'd fallen off a little flower. So I'm going to use these to make my first circle. Oops. So here is the very start of my mandala. So I move my laptop up completely so you can see. So hopefully you've started now. You started with your center and your first circle. Thinking about patterns, thinking about what you want to put in your mandala. So for this section, for this circle, I'm going to make a circle of leaves. And remember, making mandalas can really help with our feelings of calmness. So trying to do this nice and quietly, having time for yourself. Oops. Oh, this leaf is in the way. Okay. Now I've got lots of different things I can use. The grass, cocktail sticks, my conkers, for example. So now I think I'm going to make a pattern. If I have enough grasses, I'm going to do cocktail stick, grass, oops, cocktail stick, grass, cocktail stick, grass, and so on. And my last one, great. I've just got enough pieces of grass, so I've used up all my grass. And I've got my shell center, purple petals, green leaf circle, and a grass cocktail stick circle. Now I'm going to do my final outer circle of my mandala using these little kind of horse chestnut conchers to finish my mandala. Taking the stem off that one. And I've got 3 more conchers left, so I'm going to fill in spaces that I think need another little bit extra. Great. So this is my first mandala, an individual mandala, just made on my own with bits and pieces of materials that I gathered mostly from outside from the park. You can see here. So hopefully you've had time to start working on a mandala, and it would be amazing if your teachers or your SNAs, if that's possible, could share some photographs of what you're doing, and pop them into the chat so we can look at them later in the session. We'd really love to see what you're working on. And this can also be a nice kind of sorting activity. So to when you're finished the mandala, to put all the objects away again, you could store them. And so another class in the school can use them, could use them for another activity later. Um, you could print out all the photos of all the mandalas that you made in your class, and you could have a wall display of the photos of the work, for example. So I hope you enjoyed that first activity. I'd like to now show you, I've shown you the history of some mandalas and mandalas from all around the world. Now I'd like to show you some mandalas that students have created in sessions. So let me just share my screen again and show you some of these. So I'll just go from the beginning. So this is using feathers and stones. This one is on the soil, so starting at the center again and working outwards. This is at like using a lot of beach materials, flower petals, roses, displayed on a tree trunk. And now starting from here, these are mandalas that I created with one of my creative schools back in the very first day of May when we had lovely sunshine. So the Creative Schools Committee worked on this, and we worked outside. So we started at the middle. We had just a tiny little piece of kind of shamrock clover as our center, a circle of dandelions, then a circle of pebbles or beach stones. Then you can see we're making it larger. Each student on the committee was taking their turn and creating their next circle, getting larger and larger. And we can see here, it's getting really big. And then we're all having a look at our work. Beautiful sunny weather. Hopefully that comes back soon. You can see our group mandala made outside. And I also made a mandala a few years ago in an inside space in a school, and we used lots of powder paints and coloured sand. Like I showed you, like the Buddhist monk was doing, we used coloured sand and worked in groups again. You can see it's quite messy. We needed to be really organized, and you can see we drew out our pattern and then filled in the colors as carefully as we could. And we showed that for a whole school celebration day. So you've loads of ideas for group work and individual work with mandalas. So I'll just show you our final image again of our outdoor mandala, just very simple, using beach pebbles, dandelions, leaves, twigs. So it can be a nice activity to do with the Creative Schools Committee or with all your class to gather up your materials, and you can see everyone's relaxing afterwards and looking at the mandala and kind of following the pattern and having some well-being and moments of calmness while doing it. Really fun group activity with coloured sand, or you could even use flour and things from the kitchen for baking and use food dye to change the colour of your materials and then have them all in separate pots. Great. Now, for this activity, again, we're going to make another mandala, but this time we're going to make an edible mandala, one that we kind of could eat, but we'd need to cook some of the materials first. So I'm going to show you this one. So lots of kind of possibilities, tomatoes, and dried black beans. They look a bit like coffee beans. Star anise, very pretty. Spice. Cinnamon sticks. Dried pasta. Corn for making popcorn. And some lentils. So again, we're going to start at our center point. And I thought for this, a really nice way to begin would be with a star. So we've got our star anise here. Okay. And then maybe to contrast the color, we might have some pasta for our next section. So our next circle is going to be pieces of dried pasta. So you could even do a mandala just made out of different types of dried pasta. And then you could use that for maybe doing a cooking session afterwards for another time in your class. So now we've got our first center point with our star anise and a circle of pasta. Then let's see, we've got some sweet corn, or sorry, corn on the cob, dried bits that you could make popcorn with another time. We'll do a small, very delicate circle of our corns. And again, thinking of how mandalas are used in lots of different cultures all around the world, especially in places like India and Asia, to help with our calmness and sense of peace. So having this time to focus on kind of repeating shapes like the circle and enjoying the activity. So perhaps some of you in your class can be working on another mandala while I'm doing this, or you're just watching, that's okay too. So we've got our circle of popcorn. I'm going to put the rest of these away. Now we're going to change our scale. We're going to make it a pattern. We're going to bring tomatoes in. Tomatoes and cinnamon sticks. So we're getting a bit bigger what we're doing. When you're making mandalas, I would suggest you try and get bird's eye view photographs from above to really get all of the detail because that's where you're going to see things most clearly from above. So this is an edible kind of tasty mandala. We've got our star anise, which you put in like teas to give a nice kind of licorice smell. We've got our dried pasta, popcorn, then a pattern, a repeating pattern of tomato, cinnamon, tomato, cinnamon, tomato, cinnamon. And I think we're going to finish with another outer circle that has black beans and lentils in a pattern, kind of a chunky line of them. So section of beans and lentils going the whole way around our outer final section. And all the while you're working on your mandalas, trying to create a calm, peaceful environment when you're doing it, so you can really have those quiet, calm, peaceful moments while you're working on this. Just if your materials spill, that's okay. You can just tidy them up with your hand. We're nearly the whole way around the circle now. Nearly there. So unfortunately you can't experience this, but as I'm working, I can really smell the nice cinnamon and star anise licorice flavors from the materials I'm using. So this is a really nice activity that kind of includes all your senses. So lots of touching the materials, smelling the materials, seeing them, seeing the patterns. Now, so here's our edible mandala, star anise, pasta circle, popcorn circle, tomato and cinnamon circle, and a lentil and black bean outer circle on our mandala. I hope you enjoyed that one. Now, if anyone at this point in the session, if anyone has any questions or comments that they'd like to ask or share, please pop your message into the chat. It would be great to hear any questions that anyone might have, or if anyone would like me to repeat any steps so far. Okay, great. What we're going to try next is I thought it would be nice to do a really large scale mandala. So I'm going to move from my desk onto the floor, and I'm working on a larger scale. So if you could do this in your class too, if you have that floor space cleared and if you have your materials ready. So while I'm moving my laptop to the floor, we'll have a minute to get yourself ready in your classroom. So gather your materials and have some clear floor space. Maybe this is an activity that you do as a whole class, or maybe you're doing a few mandalas on the floor in different groups. Let's see. And again, it would be great to see some photos of your work. So I'm going to go onto the floor now. So I'm just going to show you some other materials that I'm working with. These are cable ties, chopsticks. But you can use all sorts of things. Cotton buds, cotton wool pads. With a real mixture of things, and I've more objects on the floor than I'm going to show you now. So I'm going to move to the floor now, and please use this time to get yourselves ready in your classroom for a floor-based mandala. Okay, so I'm just going to bring this over now. Great. So I'm going to show you some other bits and pieces I have here. All sorts of random bits and bobs. Sanding pads that you use if you're doing some sanding at home. A huge leaf that I found a while ago that I thought would be lovely as a center point. Some composting pots. These are ones that you do for planting, but they biodegrade in the soil. Just had them lying around. So you could ask maybe your school caretaker might have materials that you could use. Oops, kindlings for the fire and logs. Again, the cotton pads, the cotton buds that I mentioned. Oh yeah, some little cones, some cable ties, and some chopsticks. So hopefully you can see, okay, got my leaf as my center point. Thinking again of all around, starting from our center, kind of starting, thinking of our well-being from a, a, a stable, strong center and working outwards. So I'm going to do a little pattern for our first circle. So cotton bud and pad, cotton bud, pad, making a circle. So hopefully, as I'm working on my floor-based mandala, you are able to do this yourselves in your classroom too. It can also be, like you saw on my presentation, it can also be a really great activity to do outside. you will need to wait and take your turn. And so maybe you could be doing another kind of bit of colouring in or something like that while you're waiting for your turn or thinking about and just having some quiet moments. So I've got our first section of the mandala creations now. I'll just move my screen to show you. So a leaf and cotton pads. Great. Going to move on to kindlings and the fire. Creating a type of circle with these. Now maybe thinking of some colour. Maybe the cable ties, these bright orange cable ties could be used. And maybe with the sanding pads. So maybe sanding pad and cable tie in a pattern. And as you can see, mandalas are not going to last forever. You can't leave these in the ground forever. So they're temporary artworks just for a while. And that can also really be good for our kind of well-being, that we're just in the moment, enjoying something, enjoying making, and then we're letting it go afterwards. But like I mentioned earlier, it can be really nice to take photos while you're working and then show those on a display in your classroom or on your school newsletter to show all the work you've been doing and for you to have a nice memory. So I'm getting there with this section of my mandala. Oops, excuse me, hope you can still see. It's moving around to get all complete of each part. So my pattern here is sanding pads, cable tie in a circle. Now I've completed that section. Now I'm thinking it could be nice to have the logs in between to make it a little bit more chunky. So I'm placing a log in between each cable tie and underneath the sanding pads. Got more here, lovely. So I don't have a huge amount of floor space, but if you had your schoolyard or your like maybe PE hall, you could really involve the whole school in this. Spend a whole day, each class does one circle. There. Just gonna lift up my laptop and see how we're doing. Oops. Great. Now I didn't even use all my materials for this one. I still have plant pots left that I didn't use because I'm, as you can see, getting a little bit tight for space here. But I'm really happy with how my floor mandala has started. So I'm going to move my laptop back now, um, back to our table. I'm back to the edible mandala. And again, if anyone has any questions at this point in time, please feel free to ask. What I'd like to show you now, just going to clear some space here, is a paper-based drawing mandala, something you can do as an activity in your class or at home. So if you could, for this activity, get yourself ready with just a plain white sheet of paper from a photocopier. Gonna tidy all these seeds up later. And you get yourself ready with some coloring materials like coloring pencils. You're going to need a pencil for drawing, scissors, perhaps, and an eraser maybe, and some circles of different sizes that you can use as templates for your mandala. A good few different size circles here that we can use. Okay. So it'll be another few seconds to get yourself set up and ready with your drawing sheet, with your pencil, with your different size circles, and with your coloring pencils. Right. Now, just a quick tip before we begin our drawing is I'm going to show you how to create a square from a sheet of A4 paper for the photocopier. So you are going to fold to create a triangle. So you're going to find the corner. Okay. And that um, gives us this extra space here that we don't need. So you can fold that again so it's easy for cutting. And that's just a really quick, handy tip. Takes a while, of course, to learn and that's where the fold points are, but it's a really easy way to create a square from a sheet of A4 paper. So then along the fold line, score it, fold it, crease it with your fingers a few times so it's easier for you to see. Whoops. Then you can cut that out with the scissors. You don't need that spare bit. So now you have a square. You've got a triangular line. So fold again the other direction. So you've got lines going all the way through the center. So trying to do that nice and neatly, find your lines. So now you've got two diagonal lines and find your center point in the middle. Just make a little line there at your center point. So that's the center of your square. So again, remembering that mandalas, how important the center point is. So I've got a small circular object here that I'm going to draw around. You're going to trace around this, and that's going to be your first circle. Hopefully you can see that first circle there. And we're going gradually larger and larger. Got toilet roll um, cardboard for my next circle. So I'm going outwards. Our circles are getting slowly bigger each time. So older classes could combine this with a maths lesson and try and use protractors to get really accurate, um, spaces between the circles. But we're not going to be too fussy about this, and so on. So we're gradually getting larger, remembering that that's a really important part of the mandala, having our center circle and gradually repeating the pattern and getting larger and larger each time. So now we've built up a couple of circles. So we can obviously extend this and carry on further and further out. Um, but at this point, I'm going to stop and I'm going to start to draw patterns in each section of my circle. So I think my center point might be a flower petal. So drawing our center point and drawing our lines around that outside. Next part of our circle, I'm going to draw a series of smaller circles. Next might be triangular shapes. And again, remembering our repeating pattern each time. And allowing yourself to get really absorbed and focused on your activity and on your designs and on your patterns. And working away with our shapes, carrying that on. So now we've got a triangular section. We've got our center circle, petals, and perhaps for our outer section, it could be something a little bit different, maybe wavy, squiggly lines. Okay, moving outwards with that. Moving outwards with this. Squiggly lines. And this is something that you could start off hopefully in this session. And then you could come back to this at other times when you have some free time to carry on with this. So there's my paper-based mandala. And I am going to start doing a little bit of coloring now. Just to get you started on what the possibilities could be for this. And you can, of course, carry on and develop this further in your own time. So just to recap on this, we started with an A4 paper sheet, just one that you have in your school photocopier, nothing fancy. And I went through how to create a square from that by folding your sheet to create triangles. So following the lines carefully. and finding two diagonal lines. Then, like with all mandalas, you start at your center point. So find your center and working outwards using all sorts of like everyday circular shapes that you have around your school, around your classroom to use as templates for this to build the circle larger and larger each time. And this is something that you can keep expanding. I've stopped here, but you could go larger and larger. It could be something you do as a group work activity or just on your own. And again, thinking of mandalas for well-being and for calmness and for quiet moments. So having this as a way to relax. Great. Now, at this stage in the session, I've shown a few different ideas for making mandalas. We created one with natural materials at the start of the session, using shell, flower petals, grasses, leaves. Then we moved on to an edible mandala using pastas and dried beans and cinnamon sticks and tomatoes and lentils. Then we worked on a floor-based mandala using some larger objects. You could also use things from your PE store, like cones, like sponge balls, hula hoops, depending how much space you have. And then finally, we worked on a paper-based mandala. So I think just as a final challenge, it would be great if you would like to spend maybe 3 minutes making a mandala from maybe new ideas that might have come into your mind during the session. So if you could um, spend the next 3 minutes, I'll count you down. Just maybe you're doing it on your own or in groups or the whole class, and we'll come back and share maybe in about 3 minutes, and hopefully we'll have some ideas for what you did and some photos of the work you've done. So your final challenge is to create a mandala using all sorts of materials, a mixture of materials, and some that you haven't used already to make a mandala. Off we go. See you in a few moments. I'll just be tidying up my lentils here. And maybe while you're working, I might just show some of the images again of historical mandalas. Um, I'll just share my screen again. Bear with me. So this is showing some natural mandalas on soil, on the beach, in the back garden with flowers, on a tree trunk with leaves and berries and pebbles. And then this is one that I did in May this year with the school. Whoops. Yeah. Hopefully you can see the screen. Um, and it's getting larger and larger. And then finally complete. Using colored sand or dyed baking flour could also work. And a group activity. So we used a big sheet of plastic, drew our design, and the children then had different sections each. We worked in groups. The other children were creating paper mandalas during this floor activity. And just to recap again, I'll also show you some mandalas, historic and from around the world. Share my screen again. Again, here is the Buddhist monastery mandala using colored sands. And you can see, like we did with our paper mandala just now, drawing out in pencil and then filling it in color. A sand mandala, a mandala from South America, and an Aztec stone carved mandala, also from South America. A church stained glass mandala from France, and a Roman mosaic mandala on the floor made with tiny tiles, all starting from the center and working outwards, getting larger and larger with repeated patterns. So thanks so much. I think we might have a few questions coming up. Could you send on the slides and images? They are fabulous. We would love to see them at more in depth. Yes. Perhaps Sinead can figure out the best way to send those. I'm happy to share them with Sinead after the session.
Hi, Laura. Absolutely. We'll send on any PDF you'd like, and we can also send out a recording of the session. So if you want to trace back and start on one of the activities or keep going from the activities, we can do that no problem after we
Yeah,
finish up here today.
yeah,
Thank you
exactly.
so much, Laura. Those mandalas were gorgeous. And it's
Oh,
such a relaxing hour to spend even
yeah,
watching making the mandalas. So thank you so much.
you're very welcome. Has anyone any questions or any images they'd like to share? And
And I might say, Laura, that if anyone wants to share anything afterwards, I'll
mhm,
just put our email address into the chat now, creativeschools@artscouncil.ie, or you can use the hashtag on social media as well. So I'll put that in now.
that would be great. That would be great. We'd love to see some of your work, either that you did this morning or that you're going to do at a time that suits you. But we'd love to see your work. I think there's a few more questions. Oh yeah, great. Oh, that's great. Thanks, Sinead Casey, um, for your feedback. Yeah. So like Sinead mentioned, please do send us in your images. We'd love to see them. And if you've any questions afterwards, again, just send your email to creativeschools@artscouncil.ie. And if you have any questions about any of the activities, I'll do my best to answer them.
Thanks again so much, Laura. And thanks everyone for spending the time with us this morning.
Yeah,
It was a lovely way to spend an hour on a Thursday morning. So thank you.
yeah. I really enjoyed it, and thank you all for coming along. And I hope you had a peaceful bit of time there, and I hope you can have some nice ideas now to use at home or at school and over the summer holidays too.